So today's topic is one of those subjects that is both kind of hard to hear and listen to, but it's also inspiring in the end. And that's something called the Lost Boys of Sudan. You know that Sudan is one of the countries that we're covering this week, and you'll be quizzed on Friday. Um, there is a story that came out probably 20-ish or so years ago about a group of boys that have been now called the Lost Boys of Sudan that were from the southern part of Sudan. Remember we talked about how Sudan was made from when Great Britain was colonizing Africa, and they combined rival groups. Well, northern Sudanese and southern Sudanese historically have not gotten along for a very long time, largely over religious issues. And so when they were put together in the same country, it was putting two rivals together in the same house essentially, and it was conflict from the beginning. And so there was a civil war happening in Sudan for many, many years. Um, the A lot of conflicts came from it, a lot of issues, but one of them was what we now call the Lost Boys of Sudan. Northern Sudanese rebels and marauders and militia would head into the southern part of Sudan, and they would raid these villages and killing pretty much everybody and everything, destroying the village. And a lot of the young men were able to escape because they were up in the hills herding their sheep and goats and whatever they had. And so they would not return, and they escaped the carnage of that. And over the course of a few months, many of them kind of just found each other as they began wandering from their former homes, their home villages, and they had nothing to their name other than what they happened to have with them that day they went into the hills, and they didn't return. And over on this right side, you see a map of what used to be full Sudan. You know that this is now South Sudan down here, but this happened primarily started in central southern Sudan, and these boys just began walking and they started heading east towards Ethiopia. And over the course of several months, they again found several thousand of them, probably 2,000, 2,500 of them kind of congregated together. They made their way into Ethiopia, where they were promptly turned around by militia. Many of them were killed within Ethiopian borders because they were not wanted, and they had to turn around and head back out. They headed back into Sudan, which they couldn't stay. It was being ravaged by civil war. And so the decision was made to head south, and hopefully Kenya would take these boys. And when I'm talking about boys, I'm talking about the ages of about 5 to about 18, 16 to 18 years old. So these are not, grown men. And their journey was fraught with just terrible, unspeakable things, really, which some of them are a little too gruesome to even talk about, but they are documented in several books. There's a book you can see on the left-hand side here called A Long Walk to Water. And this is a book that we're trying as a department to get enough copies for all of us to read. It won't happen this year, unfortunately, but we're trying. And it's a quick read, but it's based on a true story about a boy named Salva who kind of becomes the leader of what we now call the Lost Boys of Sudan. And he talks about his journey from just kind of the whole thing. And so today, I wanted to read a portion of this to you, but instead of hearing me talk, since I'm at home, I thought I would take a break and let one of my favorite person in the whole world speak and do guest reading. It's my wife. So she's going to do a little bit of guest reading today. So say hey to my wife, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. Hope you guys are having a good day.
They're in my room. It's weird, right? See that my
Yeah.
lights are actually on.
All right. Well, this is a pretty powerful thing. It's not very long, but powerful for sure. So here we go. The walking began again. Walking, but to where? No one knew anything for sure. Where was Salva supposed to go? Not home. There's still war everywhere in Sudan. Not back to Ethiopia. The soldiers would shoot us. Kenya. There are supposed to be refugee camps in Kenya. Salva made up his mind. He would walk south to Kenya. He did not know what he would find once he got there, but it seemed to be his best choice. Crowds of other boys followed him. Nobody talked about it, but by the end of the first day, Salva had become the leader of a group of about 1,500 boys. Some were as young as 5 years old. Those smallest boys reminded Salva of his brother Cole. But then he had an astounding thought. Cole isn't that age anymore. He is a teenager now. Salva found that he could only think of his brothers and sisters as they were when he had last seen them, not as they would be now. They were traveling through a part of Sudan still plagued by war. The fighting and bombing were worse during the day, so Salva decided that the group should hide when the sun shone and do their walking at night. But in the darkness, it was hard to be sure they were headed in the right direction. Sometimes the boys traveled for days only to realize that they had gone in a huge circle. This happened so many times that Salva lost count. They met other groups of boys, all walking south. Every group had stories of terrible peril, boys who'd been hurt or killed by bullets or bombs, attacked by wild animals, or left behind because they were too weak or sick to keep up. When Salva heard the stories, he thought of Mario. He felt his determination growing, as it had in the days after Uncle's death. I will get us safely to Kenya, he thought, no matter how hard it is. He organized the group, giving everyone a job: scavenge for food, collect firewood, stand guard while the group slept. Whatever food or water they found was shared equally among all of them. When the smaller boys grew too tired to walk, the older boys took turns. The older boys took turns carrying them on their backs. There were times when some of the boys did not want to do their share of the work. Salva would talk to them, encourage them, coax and persuade them. Once in a while, he had to speak sternly or even shout, but he tried not to do this too often. It was as if Salva's family were helping him, even though they were not there. He remembered how he had looked after his little brother Cole, but he also knew what it felt like to have to listen to the older ones, Eric and Ring. And he could recall the gentleness of his sisters, the strength of his father, and the care of his mother. Most of all, he remembered how Uncle had encouraged him in the desert. One step at a time, one day at a time. Just today, just this day to get through. Salva told himself this every day. He told the boys in the group too. And one day at a time, the group made its way to Kenya. More than 1,200 boys arrived safely. It took them a year and a half. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, baby.
You're welcome.
All right. So thank you. So that story is, again, it's hard to listen to. It's appropriately told for your age group. It does not necessarily gloss over some of the hard stuff. It talks about how some of the boys they died from starvation. They died from being exposed to the weather. They died from being killed by the militia that was chasing them. They died from being eaten by crocodiles. They died from his friend Muriel that my wife mentioned in the story. He disappeared at night. He was dragged away by a lion and eaten by a lion. So this is not a pleasant story. But there is, if we can find it, there are some good happy endings to some of their stories. When they made it into Kenya, and that's so Salva is again kind of considered the leader of these boys and these lost boys, and made the decision to head to Kenya, which is a smart decision because they got to some refugee camps, and these refugee camps began to try to find homes for these boys around the world to get them safe. The United States agreed to take a few hundred of these boys, and I was able to. They sent some to San Diego when I was living there. The church that I was attending at the time hired a couple of these boys, young men now, to work as custodians, and so I got the chance to talk to them, and it's one of the most memorable things that I remember speaking with another human being, because this is a person. These were people that have experienced a life that I will never ever understand. They told me that because their villages had no electricity or no indoor plumbing or plumbing anywhere, um, they had to be taught before they came to the United States what a light switch was. I don't know if you've ever remember learning what a light switch did or how to use a light switch, but if you do remember that, you're probably only about this tall, right? And it's just something you saw your parents doing when you were a little kid, and saw, you reached as soon as you could, you reach up on your tippy toes and turn the light switch on, right? or flush a toilet or use a refrigerator. But these were things that these boys at 18, 20 years old had to be taught how to flip a light switch on. Like, oh, wow, the lights come on. They'd never seen that before. They'd never heard of indoor plumbing or anything. And so that was, it was extremely humbling to hear that. But what was the most humbling was that many of these young men did not want to stay in the United States or other countries where they were sent, where it was safe. They wanted to be educated and go back to Sudan, now South Sudan, and help their country become better with their education, whether they become doctors or engineers or teachers, whatever. And that's the inspiring part. So here's what I want to do. I want us to take a tragic story like this, and I want us to turn it into something hopefully a little bit inspiring. So your assignment for today is this: there are two parts of the same video. There's a TV show that you've probably never watched or you avoid when you see it come on. It's called 60 Minutes, and if you ever watch the channel and you see this clock come on, it goes it has a second hand going. You turn it off real quick, right? Because you know something newsy is coming on. Well, that's where this is from. And they did a segment on the Lost Boys a few years ago, and this it's the same video. It's just two parts. So I want you to watch part one, and then it was broken into this, part two. And they follow a few young men who came to the United States, and it follows what their story is like. This picture here on this screenshot shows them in a camp in, I believe this is still Kenya, where they are being told where they were going to go around the world. And that actually leads off to the first question on your assignment. So you're gonna watch the two videos, and then I want you to do this worksheet. There's two response questions for each part of the video, so a total of 4 questions. And I want to go over them ahead of time so that when you're watching these, you can kind of be thinking about this. That first picture I showed you shows them looking at a board for their name. And during that scene, one man was told he was going to be relocated to Kansas City, but he had no idea where it was. How would you feel about being relocated to a place you knew nothing about, but know that it's better than where you are? So he's told he's going to Kansas City. He's never heard of Kansas City before. I've been to Kansas City. It's a nice city. I liked it. They have great barbecue, but I don't think I'd ever get super excited about going there, right? Um, but here's a man who he didn't care where he was going. He just knew that wherever it was going to be, especially in the United States, it was going to be better than where he lived. And I got to tell you, folks, I don't know how to respond to that. To know that no matter where you go, it's going to be better. There's a lot of places that I could think of that could be worse than where I live, but it didn't matter to him because it didn't matter where he went, it was going to be better. That's a pretty powerful thing. So respond to that when you see that. The second part for the part one video, this part makes me want to laugh and cry at the same time because they pass around ice cubes or like a chunk of ice. They'd never seen ice before. And when they saw it for the first time, they ask if people die from the coolness of winter. So what can you imagine? What can you imagine seeing for the very first time, but having no idea what it might be or how it would affect you? We don't think of ice as something that would freak us out. It's snowing right now, or at least it was the last time I was upstairs, looked out the window, but I'm not afraid of dying from it. Yet these boys, probably the first snowfall they saw or ice, they didn't know what to expect, right? Then in part two, it talks about how the Lost Boys are indirectly responsible for the independence of South Sudan, which is crazy because this brought a lot of attention to it from the world. Or excuse me, the world was able to see what was happening in South Sudan, and that brought this issue to the forefront of this civil war in Sudan and what was happening to the Southern Sudanese people, and it kind of bumped it up a few notches. And so within the last 10 years, South Sudan has become its own country, largely in part of the story of the Lost Boys, bringing it to the public's eye. So explain that a little bit. And then finally, near the end, we see a man named Joseph throughout, but we learn about something about him in the end of the video. He went through a really rough time. I mean, you'll hear about it, but I mean, pretty much everything bad that could have happened to a person happened to Joseph. He was mugged, he was robbed, there was all sorts of stuff, but he had a rough time. But he also found out something truly amazing that he thought would never happen, and explain what that is and his reaction to it. Do you think that this end thing made up for all the issues he faced on his journey in both Sudan and America? And explain your answer. So I hope you'll enjoy that. So listen, the story of the Lost Boys of Sudan is not one of those stories where it's, you know, it's hard to say. It's one of those things where it's compelling, you want to learn more about, but it's not fun. I don't know if that makes sense. It's like the Holocaust or something like that, where there's interest and there's a compelling thing to keep you wanting to learn, but it's not necessarily a fun thing to learn about, but it's important. And I want you to know this. And so this is kind of a personal issue. Again, having met those two gentlemen years ago and talked with them, knowing that this is not ancient history. This is stuff that happened within, I know is previous to your lifetime because it's 20 years ago or so, but in the world of life, that is not very far, back far. So this is relatively current stuff. And it's important for us to know there's still people live like this around the world. So I want you to do that assignment and then get it turned in as soon as you can. Before you start that assignment, let me remind you that Friday is your Eastern Africa quiz on Sudan, South Sudan, and all the other countries that we talked about in their capitals. I will put out in an announcement the landforms and the bodies of water that you need to study, but there's only a few of them on that study guide, so study them all, and I'll tell you which ones to specifically study. Since Monday and Tuesday are non-school days. Monday's a holiday, Tuesdays are flex day. I won't see you again like this until next Wednesday, a week from today. So two things. One, make sure you get any work in that needs to be turned in, whether it's stuff from today or previous that you're missing, and make sure you study for that quiz on Friday. And also, secondly, have an awesome weekend. Be safe. Enjoy your 4-day weekend. I think it's coming at the right time. We all need a little bit of an extra breath, right? And just to kind of take a break, and then we'll kind of push towards the next break, which would be spring break. And we'll do this. You guys are doing awesome. Proud of you. I wish I was there. It is so weird seeing my classroom from this angle. But I will be back as soon as I am able to be, which should be in a couple weeks. So I'll be back. But anyway, have an awesome weekend, get some rest, and stay warm and safe. And I will see you guys online next Wednesday. Okay. Check in on Friday for the quiz. See you guys. Work on this right now. Okay. Work, work, work. Oh, by the way, you do not, because you have to watch the video. I know sometimes there's an issue. So I will let you check out of the Zoom, but just make sure you stay working on this until the end of the period. Okay. So have an awesome afternoon, and I'll see you guys. Bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
Thanks. You too, guys. See ya.
Bye.
Hey, Delilah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. You showed up during the news, right?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to mark you here because I marked you absent. I just want to mark you here. All right.
Okay.
See you, kiddo. Bye.